What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Dusty, the Airstream Trailer Renovation Restoration. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what it takes and the amount of money it takes to actually restore a vintage Airstream trailer. Now, there's a lot that goes into the thought process of what it takes and the amount of work it takes or how much money it takes, and it really depends on the overall condition of the trailer that you either have, trailer you're looking to get, or something down the road. At least with Dusty, we know that this has been a full restoration from the ground up, meaning we've done from the frame, exterior shell, interior, all of the subfloor, pretty much all brand new, electrical, plumbing, everything is pretty much brand new from start to finish. And so at least at the very end of this video, you should have about as close to a ballpark figure of what it actually takes in the full cost process in restoring one of these trailers. Now, with Dusty, since the start of this project, I have really taken the time and really put in a meticulous format on a spreadsheet, not only how much I thought the things were going to cost, but what I actually paid for them, where I got them at, all of the shipping fees, everything, so that you're not going to be left in the dust or in the dark in what it actually takes in the price of this. Now, I kind of have a unique situation, being that I had started this project right at the beginning of COVID. And so some of the things that relatively were pretty cheap a couple years ago, not necessarily that type of pricing today. So with that, let's go ahead and jump over and start talking about and breaking down the cost piece by piece so that you know what that ballpark figure looks like. So right now, if you haven't already, go down, subscribe to this channel so you keep up to date with everything that's going on as we continue to race to the finish line in the completion of this project. Also, give this video a thumbs up. Now, when buying your trailer or finding a trailer that you're trying to buy, I typically try to break it up into 4 categories. And in those 4 categories, the main 2 things is overall condition and how far it is from where you're currently at. Because obviously there's some travel that needs to be done, potentially, depending on where the trailer is that you have found or potentially going to buy. Now, the 4 things that I look for when buying that is of overall condition is the overall structure, the electrical, the plumbing, and of course the interior. And from that, that's going to give me kind of a general idea of what I need to restore or not restore when purchasing one of these trailers. Now, depending on your trailer that you're buying, you might not have to be in full depth in this restoration renovation that I'm currently doing with Dusty, but you might have at least some areas that you can potentially look for. So at least you know the things that you're going to have to buy, things that you're going to have to switch over to that are no longer prevalent from the time that these trailers were built in the era that they were, compared to the era that we're in now and the things that are available based off of the technology that has evolved. So with that, let's finally get wrapped up into that spreadsheet. Let's go ahead and switch over to that, and we're going to go ahead and start breaking it down piece by piece, part by part, price by price, and at the very end, I'm going to give you exactly what I estimated the full cost to be versus what I actually spent in this. So with that, let's go ahead and switch over and get into that timesheet, and let's take a look at that, guys. We're going to go ahead and start from where I started off, which was day 1, the purchase of the trailer itself. Now, the original owners had a list price of $6,500, and after talking with him back and forth for a little bit and getting a few more in-depth pictures, we decided to not negotiate on price and just give him his full asking price. And of course, when we did that transaction through PayPal, there was a charge to that. So we initially spent $6,688 on the purchase of the trailer itself. Now, being that we were in California, the trailer was up in Oregon, we knew it was only going to be a day's drive up there, stay the night, get up the next morning, grab the trailer, bring it back same day, and be at our house, which is exactly what we did. And so in those estimations of fuel, food, hotel, expenditures for potentially 4 tires on a trailer, getting some wiring done for brake lights of that nature, we estimated that was going to be a total of $8,200. And by the time we got home, we ended up spending $7,158.95. So that gave us an initial savings right off the bat for $1,000, $1,041.05. Now, once we got it home, There was some things that I knew that I was not going to use originally from the trailer. And there were some things that the original owners before us had purchased in their plans of restoring and restorating Dusty. And so because of that, those things I knew I were not going to use, I ended up starting to list them and started to sell them off. And in those sales, unfortunately, I had some issues with some supply chain shippers that damaged some of those items. And of course, me not spending insurance on the over and above, I ended up having to refund some of that money back to some of those people that had purchased some of that. So after it was all said and done, we ended up making $1,167 in the sale of that. Now, granted, there are two things I still need to sell, like two of the original axles, which I'm going to clean up and sell those once I do. And of course, the original power charger and fuse panel from the trailer, which I need to do some cleaning and some soldering on some few things to get that back up, running and ready for sale. But generally speaking, the initial estimate of the $8,200 and with the total of $2,200 in savings, the trailer for its total initial cost actually came out to $5,991.95. So now we're ready to start the restoration process. Of course, figuring out what we need, the parts we need, obviously tools since we're going to be DIY. And no matter how much of DIY person you are, you're just not going to have every tool that you're going to need to be able to do this type of work. And so you're going to figure out what you need. Now, for me, for those, I figured there's going to be about 3 rounds of tool purchases based off of the various work that I was going to do. And I can tell you in that I estimated about $2,500 in tools. Now, for me, I have quite a few other tools, things that I've already had previous. So I didn't have to purchase a lot of this stuff initially. But generally speaking, you could probably end up spending close to $5,000 or $6,000 just in tools alone if you don't have it. But for me, I estimated about $2,500. Now, in the first round of tools, I needed all of that stuff, things like pole jacks and grinders, the drill bits, grinding wheels, various things. And so I ended up spending, of course, only $592 initially of the $1,200 I estimated. But the second round of tools, particularly pay attention because that contour with drums that I had originally purchased and thought I needed, completely did not need. And I'll tell you, it was a waste of $515 that I could have saved and put back in my pocket. So note to self for you watching this, it's not something that you'll need at all, no matter where you're at in the restoration or renovation of your project. And just avoid that at all costs. Now, third round of tools, there were some things I needed like a nibbler, a face shield, rivet set, a few C-clamps and hoses and various things. But generally speaking, at the end of it, I only spent $1,500. And so we ended up saving just shy of $1,000. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is plumbing. And mind you, as I started purchasing these things, a lot of the stuff I had purchased ahead of time. I waited for things to go on sale. And when I started, before I even purchased the trailer, I started parting out things and trying to figure out all the various things that I would need to build a trailer. And of course, there's a lot of things that I didn't need and a lot of things that I thought I didn't need that I actually did need that I had to add. But at the end of all this, this is everything, obviously, as we're going through, that was needed for the full renovation restoration, at least on Dusty. Now, when we're talking about plumbing, some of the things that I initially got prices on, like the freshwater tank or the gray tanks, you can see that I ended up spending well more than what I initially quoted it at, whereas there's some other things that I thought I was going to spend on where I spent a lot less on. So as we go through this, you can see there's some stuff that obviously I did spend over and obviously things that I did spend under, but there are some things I did get lucky on. Things like the pipes and the PEX fittings that the original owners had already purchased that, well, I knew I was going to have to get anyway. So those are the things that I kept that I didn't have to spend out of pocket. Talking like $500 worth of stuff that I don't have to spend that I get to save. I guess that's kind of the wash on the other thing that I spent $500 over on, right? But typically speaking, when it comes to the total of this, I estimated just over $3,200 in plumbing. We ended up spending $2,300 and, of course, another $885 in savings. So as we moved into the electrical, as I started doing some of the work, I will tell you, for example, like the trailer camp plug that I had initially installed, that I had purchased well ahead of time. I ended up installing incorrectly, and because of that, I couldn't even get it out to the point that I actually had to cut it out with a Dremel tool. And because of that, I damaged it to no repair. I ended up having to go buy another one, which was almost impossible to find. But once I did, I ended up spending $51 more than what I had originally paid for it. But thinking about the $140 initially, that ended up becoming well over the $300 mark. So in those instances, I had only saved about $19 when I should have saved roughly a couple $100. Some of the other things as we went through, things when we talk about the solar off-grid and battery storage, I tell you the battery storage alone that I thought I was going to spend $600 on. You can see that I spent over $1,300 and lost over $700 in savings on that. So needless to say, get your timing right depending on when you can buy your stuff and not buy it. I will tell you most of my purchases I try to make around holidays just because of sales and various things where I can save that. But generally speaking, when we talk about the electrical alone, I thought I was going to spend roughly $7,470, and we ended up spending just over $6,000, which gave us another savings of just shy of $1,400. Now, coming to the structure portion of it, the structured portion is about the most expensive part of the project, at least in the way that I incorporate and break up the categories for this. You can see that I put in the exterior panels, the interior panels, all of the subflooring, all of the rivets, things like the belly pan, all of the frame welding, the stabilizing jacks, the electric hitch jack, all of the axles, rims, and tires, things like windows, the AC unit, all of the stuff that is structurally making the trailer the structure of itself. That is what I considered this to be. And because of that, you can see there are some things that I had made savings on, things that I made over savings on, things that I estimated like the windows at $2,000 that I didn't even spend a single dime on. But generally speaking, I thought and estimated roughly $21,085, and we spent just over $13,000, which gave us a savings just shy of that $8,000 mark. Now, looking at the interior finish, you'll see as I come through this, you're going to see some things like the flooring where the initial owners had purchased some of that and we actually liked it, so we decided we're going to utilize it. We didn't have to spend that out of pocket. But you'll see some of the things like the bed frame or some of the other frames for like the storage closet or the kitchen area. And the reason why you don't see that is I'm going to talk about that at the very end. But everything in the framing, which is the last thing I have yet to purchase, I initially, when you add it all up, I estimated about $630. And I went over to Lowe's, and it was roughly about $350 after taxes to purchase all that. So generally speaking, I'll talk towards the end of what that looks like. But the only thing that I have not purchased is about $600 worth of estimation, which is going to be about $350. So looking through all this interior, obviously the flooring, the bed frame, the mattress, the interior paint, the vanity fixtures, the sinks, the shower pans, the backsplash, all of this stuff that we have gone through. Looking at all of the electric stovetops, the microwaves, the refrigerators, we estimated to spend interior $9,380. However, we actually saved money there, only spent $5,099, which gave us a savings of just over $4,200. Now, when we look at each one of those categories, looking at the actual trailer cost, you can see from the trailer cost to the tools, to the plumbing, to the electrical, to the structure, and the interior, when we add all that up, the complete estimation cost, which is about a ballpark figure that you hear most people say, which is about $50,000 to renovate and be able to purchase one of these, is about exactly where I came up with, $49,873. However, in all those savings, even in the time of COVID, when people were not making anything, when things were almost becoming hard to find or getting people to ship things out or various things, we only spent $34,000, saving us just shy of $16,000. Now, when I say this, remember this is full DIY myself, so I'm not sending this out to a shop to do any of the work. I'm completely doing all of the work, which means I'm saving 100% on the labor other than what I feel my labor is worth. So with that, talking about that $630 estimated, obviously I said that $356 is what we're going to spend on. You could add that $400 to the total cost, and we're going to be about $34,500 to fully renovate and restore Dusty, the Airstream trailer. Now, yours might be a little more in depth, it might be a little less in depth, but hopefully looking through this and seeing everything that I had bought, what I thought it was going to cost, where I thought it was going to land versus what I paid for and the savings that I made, generally speaking, without the labor cost, it's about $34,500 to purchase and fully restore a vintage Airstream. Now, on all the companies that were out there that I purchased these things through, whether it was Lowe's locally at my improvement store, Wayfair online, build.com, things like eBay, which I use a lot of, Vintage Trailer Supply, which I used a lot of, High Sky RV Parts, which I used a lot of, Trailer Wheels, things like Woodland Airstream Parts, even OD MRV, if I remember them correctly, .net, Air Parts Inc., which was massively huge in the stuff that they do as far as panels and rivets and getting that out to you, which was about as quick as you can possibly ever imagine, quicker than actually paying for overnight shipping. That's how quick it was. But generally speaking, that was the full cost of this, and hopefully that gives you a ballpark figure on what it needs to take, what it's going to take out of your wallet to fully restore and renovate a vintage Airstream trailer so that you could put your dreams into reality and be back on the road, snapping heads as you cruise down the highway. Guys, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this on a note. I appreciate all the time and effort that you guys have been giving me on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram page, all the questions, the comments you guys have been giving me. I can't thank you guys enough. With that, we're going to end this on a note. We're going to jump over to the next video, which is going to be probably the 7-pin wire or maybe into the installation of the insulation process ahead of interior panels. But with that, I thank you guys all for the support, the continued support you've been giving me. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. And with that, like as always, this is Danny signing out.